Okay, let me start with my first question. You are the chair of East-West Psychology Department at California Institute of Integral Studies. Can you briefly tell us about the insights of East-West Psychology?
Hmm. Well, the first thing to clarify, I'm no longer the chair. I was the chair for the last 5 years.
Okay.
But last year I passed it back to someone else. So I'm now a professor in the department, but no longer the chair. But I was the chair. And I mean, basically, one thing to also clarify is that East-West psychology is a name that comes from our past. In the 1970s, there was like this really important encounter of Western psychology and Eastern traditions, here in the States, the counterculture, Buddhism was coming into the West and Hinduism, but right now the department is wider than the East and West. In a way, it's like East, West, but it's also North and South. So it's like Western psychology and Western traditions, it's Eastern traditions, and there's also the indigenous and shamanic traditions of the world. So in a way, it's like a global dialogue about the interface of psychology and spirituality and applications in the modern world.
That's wonderful.
And in terms of, yes.
I mean, I am also interested in researching about shamanism, especially the works of Dr. Michael Harner. It's wonderful to hear that, it's part of your department, the shamanic studies.
Absolutely, yes. In a way, like what we have been saying here in California, that as you probably know, here in the Bay Area of California, like the cultural and spiritual trends, that start here, later they get spread, in the globe, they reach Europe like a few years later, there is other parts of the States, So what I've been seeing here in the last decade actually is that more and more students and spiritual seekers, they like in the 60s and 70s and even 80s, it was the East and the Eastern traditions what was kind of attracting, like most of the spiritual seekers. And that is still important. Still many people go to India. Of course, yoga and mindfulness meditation are extremely important. They became mainstream, right? But right now, like more and more students and seekers, they are really interested in going into South America, working with different teacher plans and shamanic practitioners. So we have been like witnessing this trend in the last decade.
Mm-hmm. I understand. That's wonderful. My next question is Western psychology's philosophy is based on the discoveries of materialistic science and empirical studies. Especially psychiatric drugs are quite effective in helping people around the world. However, psychotherapies are not as helpful as they should be. I mean, many people get disappointed in therapies. In fact, psychiatry professor Stanislav Grof once stated that more than 50 years of experience demonstrated him that Western psychotherapies are superficial. What is your view on this issue?
Yes.
Do you think that there is a weakness?
Yes. Well, I know Stan Grof, and I studied with him many years ago, and I really respect his opinion. My sense is that he's especially when he's talking about the superficiality of Western psychotherapy. I believe, and I'm pretty sure, because after I took his classes many years ago, and after with him about this, and I'm pretty sure he's referring to verbal approaches to psychotherapy. He was training mainstream psychoanalysis, So I tend to agree with him that verbal approaches, purely verbal approaches, in which basically as a therapist sit with a client and they talk for an hour once a week, sometimes very often for years, they could be superficial, or let's put it this way, you may need to spend many years in psychoanalysis until transformation takes place. But today, of course, in addition to Stan Grof's Holotrophic Breathwork, but today there is many other psychotherapeutic approaches that also involve like the body, for example, somatic, like the somatic approach to psychotherapy, in which practitioners are also just not simply speaking to their clients, but there could be like respectful therapeutic thoughts. And I think that those approaches are not as superficial, they could be more effective, Of course, I mean, you mentioned in your question that psychiatric drugs are quite effective, but this is, as you may know, this is also a very controversial statement because there has been research and new books coming out really unveiling that, how many drugs like antidepressants, they don't work better than placebos, and we have been told that they do because FDA administration, allows a drug into the market when they have two positive trials, but very often those two positive trials happened in a context of many negative ones. So when researchers were into the FDA archives to research all these, they found out that many, antidepressants today, they don't work even better than placebos. What in a way is fascinating because it speaks about the power of the mind and belief, right?
Yes.
People talk about placebo as something that is taken for granted, but placebo is like an amazing thing. It's basically saying if you really believe you are getting better, you get better, even if you don't take the psychoactive pill, So that's also important.
I understand. This question is also kind of related to the Western psychological philosophy. I read this book called Abducted, written by Susan A. Clancy. She just interviewed with people who claim that they were abducted by aliens. Of course, she doesn't believe that. She thinks that this is just a false memory creation. She also says in her book that people who believe in astrology or some kind of psychic phenomenon or the UFOs and things like that, they are actually schizophrenical personalities. And
wow.
She actually says that, and in fact, she thinks that these are kind of weird beliefs. Like if you believe in reincarnation, that's a weird thing.
Sure.
And she graduated from Harvard University, a very important psychologist.
Yes.
So, what is your opinion about it?
Yes. Obviously, this is kind of what we could call it's rooted in a conflict of cosmologies and cosmovisions, right? We have been indoctrinated from day one here in the West about a particular cosmovision that is quite narrow, it's materialistic. The only thing that exists is this physical universe. It's meaningless, and there is no other dimensions of reality beyond what we see and we can touch, and empirical science is the only way to find knowledge around it, So this is a very particular cosmovision that has a historical emergence in the West, But the problem, as Stan Grof and others have pointed out, is that those people who have experiences that are different from what this particular cosmovision tells you is the only reality, then automatically in the mainstream culture they are kind of targeted as someone who has a problem, or has a set of pathological problem, or is having hallucinations, So I mean, this is the root, and this is not to say that all schizophrenias or madness are mystical journeys. This is important too, because it's also the other extreme, right? With R.D. Laing, the anti-psychedelic movement, they were almost mystifying schizophrenia and madness. And in a way, that's also another extreme that is dangerous because it minimizes the tremendous suffering that many people undergo in psychopathology, but also simplistic is because there are many different types of what we call schizophrenia. Is just a term that includes many different types of conditions, some of which they are based in certain kind of anatomical and brain malfunction, and sometimes it's genetic, But within that term also there is many individuals, that they are diagnosed schizophrenics, and they are undergoing what Stan Grof calls spiritual emergencies, or also in the literature of the spiritual traditions of the world, they receive different names. For example, shamanic crisis. Like when an individual is in, claims that has been like abducted by aliens, it would be fascinating, to find out more about the phenomenology of the experience, and try to understand what's really going on in the deep unconscious of this person, I remember talking with John Mack. John Mack, you probably know his work. He was a Harvard professor of psychiatry, and he interviewed many abducted individuals, and actually Harvard at some point tried to fire him, but he won the case on the grounds of academic freedom and research. But John Mack, of course, was concerned about. He was being accused. Do you really believe this is an objective reality, right? That aliens come and abduct a person, or and the problem here is that in our kind of epistemological dualism that we have like inherited, from modern science, either things are objective or are purely subjective, right? Either something is real, objective reality, or is like a subjective hallucination. And that's a very limited way to look at reality. In my own work, for example, I talk about many spiritual experiences being co-created. So we participate, we encounter something that is real, but the form that it takes and is being shown to us is also somehow co-created by our own subjectivity. So it's more complex than is just objective or a brain hallucination.
Okay, but
this addresses a little your question.
I have just one thing to say here. I agree with you, your point. In fact, I have a major interest in this field, so I can understand you. However, in her book, Dr. Susan Clancy says that people who are, who have fantasy proneness or magical belief, because that's what she calls, if you believe in astrology or reincarnation and that sort of thing. She says that they are more likely to create false memory creation in the labs.
This is precisely what John Mack was being accused, in Harvard. And I don't think that that was the case in his research, but that doesn't mean that every researcher has the ethical standards that he had. So I don't think it's white or black. I think that some researchers or some psychotherapists who believe in reincarnation and or believe in alien abductions, they may have a role in certain, but others, I don't think that's the case, So it really depends on the ethics of the particular researcher, But the accusation that everything falls into that category, that feels kind of like, a bit too much, like exaggerated, like putting everything in the same box,
See, that's the problem.
You mentioned, yes, go ahead.
I agree with your point. The thing is that, people who are in the, domain of materialistic science, it seems like they want to, impose certain thoughts on people. Like, if you believe in UFOs, or, you have mental problems. If you believe in astrology, you have mental problems. And they are trying to prove that.
Yes.
Now, that's a major problem.
Yes. Yes. It's very tricky, it's very challenging because you see, like, let's take astrology, for example, astrology, in a way, the claims of astrology goes against the very core of modernity, and most scientists, they really, for them it's extremely important to retain the values of modernity, basically meaning in the universe, is created by the human mind. There is no given meaning in the cosmos, That's what differentiates modernity from the medieval times, right, in which everything was enchanted, So the claims of astrology that the actual arrangement of the physical universe, the physical cosmos, in particular, the solar system, is kind of meaningful, for each individual soul here on Earth, goes against the very, very core of modernity. So it's one of the hardest claims to swallow, When I remember when I wrote a blog for Richard Turner's Cosmos and Psyche, I said that the astrology was the last frontier in the reenchantment of the cosmos, because it's today. It's not easy for most people in the mainstream culture, but for many it's still easy, to resacralize the unconscious, the psyche, there is like, and there is like life and spirit and soul. And for many people today also, because of the ecological environmental sensibilities emerging, it's also relatively easy to resacralize nature, and the planet and Gaia, but to resacralize the physical cosmos in itself, the solar system, that's the last frontier, reenchantment of the cosmos, and it's very, very challenging. Like my sense is that Richard Turner's book, it's an Herculean effort, heroic effort to speak to the modern mind, both philosophically and also through empirical data. But still, as you probably suspect, like any statistician, could bring criticism about empirical data, could bring other statistics, could kind of try to fear things, could say this is not falsifiable, And but my sense is that the key thing is to engage experientially astrology. You need to. I started extremely skeptical about astrology like 20 years ago, and through the years, and looking at transits and looking at my own chart and many others, it's only when you participate and you can start to become convinced that there is really something very important there. And ultimately, as Rick Turner says, it's about opening the archetypal eye, So there is like a transformation that can take place in the person that can help you to discern those truths, So it's very challenging. So when scientists, came across astrology, of course they have like a very, also very normally very simplistic version of astrology in mind when they critique astrology. So, it's natural that they would say, this person has a problem because what he's saying goes against the very core of what modernity considers to be sanity.
Right, because the modern approach is a materialistic approach. Everything has a materialistic basis. Even they are trying to find a materialistic basis for consciousness, but so far they haven't created any equation that this part of the brain, creates consciousness. There is still no physical evidence so far.
Correct. Yes, and this is what is being called in the philosophy of mind. It's called, as you know, the hard problem. How consciousness, experience, qualia can emerge from neurochemical and electrical process in the human brain, in matter, And, there is, of course, a few extremely materialistic philosophers that they believe that this is going to, at some point, will find a breach. But most, an increasing number even of mainstream philosophers of mind and scientists today, they don't believe that's solvable, So they're looking for solutions somewhere else. And here is also where some even scientists today, they're starting to look into the contemplative traditions. And some of them even, they are reformulating insights that the traditions were talking all the time, but in more secular terms, in more naturalistic terms. So many scientists and philosophers of mind today, they are talking about consciousness being a property of the cosmos, And this is very close to more spiritual views, right, about the cosmos. So we're seeing that the scission between science and religion, at least in certain trends today, is starting to become weaker. And I think there is a lot of promise and hope there.
Karma, Tibetan Buddhism, consciousness, altered states of consciousness have become increasingly popular in the West. Many people are turning to Eastern wisdom and mysticism. However, people who introduced these concepts to the West were Western scholars and scientists like William James, Carl Gustav Jung, Stanislav Grof, and Michael Harner. Do you think it is the Western wisdom that discovered and revised the Eastern wisdom?
Yes, it's normally when this has been a characteristic of the West that basically we believe deep down, and philosophers and scientists that we know better than other cultures, that other cultures have more mythical, symbolic understandings, but our scientific understanding or our psychological understanding is more sophisticated, and then when we approach either Eastern meditation or shamanic ayahuasca ritual, with our categories and our psychological models, that we know better what they're doing. And this is very tricky, it's very tricky because many of those cultures, they have extremely sophisticated psychological systems and understandings, That doesn't mean that all what they claim should be taken prima facie, like should be taken just like as fact, But I think it's very important, is even more given the history of Western imperialism and colonialism, to approach the encounter among cultures like West and East and South, indigenous, with mutual respect and from a position of a kind of symmetrical encounter in which we really perhaps we're open that we can teach something to them, but also we can learn from them, In a way, like we could say that like cultures, like people, we're all superior and inferior to each other, but in different regards, right? Not as whole. So I'm sure there are many things that a shaman knows that can teach to scientists, or like many things that Buddhists, the teachers or Indian devotees, know that can illuminate the Western psychological models of the psyche. But also the other way around, there may be things, for example, understandings of the unconscious, or defense mechanisms, or things that were developed here in the West that, as far as we know, in the East, they didn't have such sophisticated understanding of certain parts of that. And then therefore is when a really rich, mutually transformative dialogue can take place. But for that, it's important that both as Westerns, but also Eastern people or indigenous people, when we come to these encounters, it's important that we let go of our deep-seated pride, because there is a lot of cultural pride when we come to these cross-cultural encounters. This is part of the kind of like forum of respectful dialogue that in the East West Psychology Department here at CIS we try to foster, in which there is dialogue, there is inquiry among different traditions and different people, but with that kind of like attitude of mutual respect. So in answer to your question, yes, there may be ways in which certain Western models have illuminated aspects of Eastern traditions, but I don't think that they are necessarily offering a better understanding than what they had. They are offering a different understanding that can illuminate some parts and perhaps can obscure others,
I understand. In the beginning of the interview, we talked about, alien abductions and UFO phenomenon. The fact is that it is almost impossible to consider that we are being visited by aliens from other galaxies. I mean, after all, no scientific evidence can support a belief like that. It is also strange that advanced aliens perform some kind of medical exam. They're supposed to have this unimaginable technology, but they have to abduct people and use primitive tools like big needles for medical and biological examinations. So in that sense, it doesn't make sense at all. But from another perspective, few UFO files seem very accurate and possess certain physical evidence which even shock the scientists. In Michael Talbot's book, The Holographic Universe, suggests that the behavior of UFOs are image-like or holographic projections. Now, the paradox is that they are unreal in a strict sense, but they are also real in another perspective. And they also do some real physical impact to people and environment in few cases. How would you interpret a holographic universe? I mean, what would be the other realities that we may be facing?
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a fascinating question. Like my sense, my personal sense, and it's a sense that has been informed by both my studies throughout many years, but also my own personal experience. With different state of consciousness, and in particular also with, teacher plants, working with different shamans in South America, ayahuasca, San Pedro, and other things. And the sense that has been like emerging like through the years is that we live, that the cosmos is interdimensional. So we live in an interdimensional cosmos. This dimension of reality that we see and we can touch and see and colors, and it's just one dimension, and there are many others that coexist in this dimension, different frequencies of energy and being. My hunch, if I had to make like a bet, like a guess, is that those aliens, visions or UFOs or visions of like different beings, like you, I have a hard time believing that they're coming from in this physical universe really, really far away. I mean, we're like, the chances are very, very little of that, given what we know about the cosmos and the probability of life in other planets that they have like certain distance, to us, But my experience that they could be like coexisting with us in other dimensions, and this is kind of corroborated by shamans from different parts of the world. For example, the Shipibo tradition and in the Peruvian Amazons, they have had, or they claim to have had contact with aliens through ayahuasca and through shamanic journeys for decades, perhaps even centuries. And some painters like Pablo Morindo and others, that they depict ayahuasca visions from Shipibos. They very often paint like UFOs and alien creatures. This is what I would go in terms of that. I don't think my bet is that I don't think they come from another planet in the physical cosmos, but they may come from a different dimension of reality. And some of them may be catalysts of shamanic crisis or shamanic journeys or spiritual initiations in some people. And the trick thing is like how is that experienced by the person who is receiving that, and a person that has been completely indoctrinated in this materialistic paradigm, and then a lot of fear can come up, and many other like difficulties, and as we know, certain abducted people they had like serious psychological problems with that. So that's where I would go with this. I remember the last thing I will share with you is I remember in a conference in Esalen Institute several years ago, Jacques Vallée was there. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh yes,
French. If you follow you, that's Steven Spielberg based, in Contes de la Cerca, and partially in his biography. So Jacques Vallée was there, and he was. I found him to be very rational and really, good ethics of research. So he gave like a slideshow, and he was very candid. He said in that conference that 98% of UFO seeing or all those things could be explained like natural ways. And he gave a lot of slideshows and information and like showing like many of the things that look at UFOs are natural phenomena or sondas and so forth, But there is like 2 or 3% of cases that are extremely well documented, and I think that you know more about this than myself, that really, no one knows what to do with them.
Yeah, no scientific explanation at all.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So this is a big challenge. And he presented the evidence to us, and it was quite compelling.
You know what the problem here is? The major problem is today's psychiatrists, generally speaking, are so dismissive about alien abductions or demonic possessions, even though sometimes their medications do not solve the problem. And in few cases, these unfortunate people truly experience something bizarre, but they are left alone since psychiatrists do not take them seriously. In the sight of a modern psychiatrist, this is not real. It's just a hallucination or sleep paralysis.
Exactly.
And so, where will they turn to? If they don't get help from a professional, then they are left all alone.
Exactly. Yeah, this is one of the greatest tragedies, of our times. That many people who for one or other reason, they start having access to dimensions of reality that might exist, for all we know, but they don't fit into the vision of modern materialistic science that is the prevalent one, and then they are targeted, they're like isolated as crazy, and that's one of the greatest problems that I think Sangrove and many other researchers are trying to address with their work. I think once you accept, for example, that archetypal realities, archetypal energies, and also you want to accept that we live in an interdimensional cosmos, then many of those so-called brain hallucinations or visions, they may be seen in a different light, right? And that's one of the tasks that I think like disciplines like psychology and transpersonal psychology are trying to labor a different path for our culture, that at least can create an openness to understandings that are a bit different than the mainstream, and perhaps could be extremely healing to many people who are going through those episodes.
I understand. I have actually major interest in California Institute of Integral Studies because it's really my major interest area, what they are teaching over there. So I have a master's degree, and at some point in the future, I would like to get my PhD from CIIS. So I was thinking maybe you might recommend me to the university. Maybe I might also teach there at the same time.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Very fantastic. Yeah, the CIS is a very special place, As you know, like Richard Turner and Stan Grove is there, and there are many very fantastic scholars, So definitely you should come and visit and explore some of what has to offer, That's really wonderful.
Yes. Well, Dr. Jorge Ferrer, thank you very much for your time. I mean, it was wonderful, wonderful experience for me. This is all I have for the interview.
Thank you so much, Ugur.